Li Bai, listening to a monk of Shu play his lute. The monk of Shu, with his lute green damask in his arms, came down the west slope of Mount Ma. He waved his hands across the strings, like the rustle of pines in 10,000 valleys. The traveller's mind was refreshed as if by flowing water. Faint echoes tinkled in the frost-ringing bells. I never noticed the green mountain evening, nor the dark autumn clouds massing above. So, yet another of the regulated poems of Li Bai. Now, the topic of this poem, as you have very clearly seen probably or listened to while I was reading, is music. The entrancing, the bewitching aspect, the seductive aspect of music, which is a very common topic in Chinese culture. We've encountered it in some of the poems in this collection. You will remember some of the old-style heptasyllabic poems of Lute, and at least 2 or 3 of those were about music as well. In fact, they were very similar poems to this one, but they were much lengthier, they were much bigger poems. So I can already say that on this first impression, and basing myself on memory, I think I prefer Li Bai's version to Liqi's version. So the problem with Liqi's poem, if you'll remember, is that he just kept heaping metaphors and metaphors and metaphors and metaphors from the visual and from the oral to compare the effect of the music on the person. But you know, they became confusing for me because the Lushi, the regulated poem, is much briefer. There is less of an accumulation of images in this poem, and I think that economy works better at just transmitting in a simple and direct way some of the impressions, some of the feelings, some of the mental images that might arouse in a person listening to music well played. So we said the topic is, let's go back to the topic, we say it's the entrancing character of music. The music that is being played here is on a chin. Remember, lute is the generally preferred option for translating what the Chinese instrument called the guqing, which is more than like a lute as we imagine it. It's more like a thither or a psaltery. That is, it's a horizontal board with some strings attached to the top. So a minor element in this poem, you could say, is the local flavor. So the person who is playing is a monk from Shu, and Shu, you will remember, the modern province of Sichuan, is the area in which Li Bai himself was born. So I'm not exactly sure where this poem is located. From what it says, a monk in the first line, a monk coming down. In the first couplet, a monk coming down from Mount Ma, I imagine it is located in Shu, in Li Bai's homeland. So there is that regional quality to it. So the poet is listening to music from home. And so it includes probably that element of regional belonging that would be generated in a different context. For example, in a Galician context, by a person hearing somebody playing bagpipes. Okay, so as I said, main topic, the power of music to seduce and to entrance, which is a very common topic in all Chinese, not only poetry, but also prose and philosophy. Some regional flavoring, because we are in Shu. And yeah, I think that's about it. There might be some allegorical political meaning in the last couplet, which we will comment about when we reach it. So let's go as usual, couplet by couplet. The monk of Shu, with his lute green damask in his arms, came down the west slope of Mount Ma. So the first couplet locates us. in the situation. It locates us geographically. We are in Shu, probably relatively close to Mount Ma, which is it's probably the most famous mountain in Shu. And it was probably, like other famous mountains in China, and as is implied from this poem, the home of many Buddhist monasteries. So we're there, and a monk has come down from the mountain. Maybe he's on a mission or for some unspecified purpose. And, Li Bai and other people perhaps have encountered him and have enjoyed or are going to enjoy him playing some delightful music. Just one comment about the lute that the monk is carrying. It's called green damask. So different translators have interpreted this differently. So in another translation, the idea is that the lute is protected by green damask. But in a note to this poem in this edition, it is implied that the green damask is the name of another lute that had been played by a famous poet writer of the past, Sima Xiangru, probably the greatest Fu writer of the Han Dynasty, and also a person from Shu, like Li Bai and like this monk. Okay, let's go to the second couplet. So in the first couplet we get the monk and we get the geographical setting. In the second couplet we get the start of the concert. The monk starts strumming or playing the lute, and a certain poetic image or vision comes to mind in Li Bai. He waved his hands across the strings like the rustle of pines in 10,000 valleys. So he starts playing, and the sound brings to Li Bai's mind the light rustling of the wind in the mountains. So it's a similar soft, rustling sound. So of course this is a metaphor, but one thing that you have to know about the chin, if you haven't heard it, is that its sound is very, very subdued, very light. You have to be pretty close to the instrument to be able to hear the sound. It's not a very loud instrument. So probably the metaphor is apposite. It's appropriate in the way in which it conveys a light sound, like flowing and through pine trees, like the wind flowing through pine trees. Although, of course, that would be a whistling sound, and of course we know that the chin is a string instrument, so this would be a stringy sound. But remember, it's a metaphor. Metaphors establish an essential similarity between two elements, but they are different. If they weren't different, there wouldn't be a need for the metaphor. The next couplet. So the next couplet, if the second couplet, which is the first parallelistic couplet, shows us what comes to mind when one listens to this music being played, the second parallelistic couplet tells us the effects that this music has on the listeners. The traveller's mind was refreshed as if by flowing water. Faint echoes tinkled in the frost-ringing bells. So this music purifies the mind. So for the traveller, another metaphor, it is like a bath in flowing fresh water for a traveller who has just arrived from, or who has just made a stop from a very long journey. So it's a purifying, a cleansing sound that, purifies and refreshes the body. And it's believed to harmonize or to reverberate. Its echoes tinkle in the frost-ringing bells. Now, frost-ringing bells were a famous set of bells that were supposed to ring when frost fell on them. So they were so delicate and so finely tuned that even frost falling on them would make them ring. The echoes of this lute also make a similar bell ring. Yeah. So the echoes of this music, are very delicate, are very beautiful, and they harmonize in sympathy and generate a harmonious sympathy in other musical instruments that might be reached by the sound waves. Finally, the conclusion. The conclusion is the effect of this music not on a hypothetical traveller or on another instrument, but on the listener himself, on Du Fu. On Li Bai. I never noticed the green mountain evening, nor the dark autumn clouds massing above. So entranced was Levi, presumably, by this musical concert and by the lovely sound of the monk's lute, that he didn't even notice that the sun was setting, that the mountains, the green mountains in the background, with their lovely sunset sights, became, indistinct for him. And he didn't even notice, we get the only seasonal reference in the poem is at the end, the dark autumn clouds had been massing on top of him. So the music is so seducing that the beautiful landscape background to the music being played is, obliterated, is forgotten by the poet while he's in the trance of this godlike music. Now, I don't think this poem has any political intentions, but dark autumn clouds massing above, that seems like a pretty ominous image. Does it threaten rain or storm in autumn, where Levi is staying in Shu? Is it meant to be interpreted as maybe as a very subdued political reflection on the times, on the dark clouds massing, and on how music allows for an escape, for a respite of any sort of background effects, which might be not landscape effects, but social political effects? I don't know. Could be, or maybe not. Anyway, it's a very nice piece that shows us in a very synthetic, but I think very effective way, the power of music. It perfectly could have been an impromptu poem composed by Levi to thank the monk for his performance, but, I find it pretty effective, pretty effective.